Hey, folks. I thought I'd show my face for once. I hope you're all doing well. Um, this is going to be your Unit 4, Lesson 1 I do, so pay close attention and let's learn some things. All right. Shrink myself down, put myself over here. Here we go. Compare and contrast text. All right, so what does that mean? What does it mean to compare? All right, so our learning goal for this lesson, this overall lesson, is going to be I can use the text to compare and contrast two things. I can use the text to support my thesis. Now, a thesis is sort of like an argument or an idea, kind of like a main idea. And so we'll get into that. Define, compare, and contrast. So to compare something is when we list things that are alike between objects, ideas, people, etc. So here we're comparing apples to oranges, which a lot of people say you can't do, but you can, because apples are both fruits. Apples are both, and oranges are round. They both have peels. They both come from trees that are grown in orchards. So, you can definitely compare the two. Now, on the other hand, contrasting means this is where we list things that are different between objects, ideas, people, etc. So, differences might be that the peels on apples are thinner than the peels on oranges, which have a thicker peel. They also have oil in their peel, which apples do not. Let's see, oranges tend to have a squishier inside, and apples tend to have a crisper, stiffer inside. So, those are some of the ways that they are different, right? So let's compare and contrast. So what is the purpose of a compare and contrast text? Well, they can help us make choices. If I'm looking at a bunch of different descriptions of the Chinese restaurants in the area and I'm trying to decide where to go, I might see that, both these restaurants serve my favorite dish, Moo Gai Pan, but this restaurant has better crab rangoons and I really like crab rangoons. So that helped me make my choice. I'm going to go to restaurant 2 so I can get those, better crab rangoons. It can also help us understand problems. That might be something that's a little more, purposeful, in that, if I can see how a problem affects one group of people and that live in one area versus how it affects another group of people in another area, or maybe one person sees a problem one way and another person sees a problem another way, I can understand that problem much fuller, right? And then finally, to rank in concept. So a lot of times that means something like, if I ask you who's the best NBA player of all time, I might get Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Steph Curry, all these different names. And then what we have to do is we have to compare. So we have to look at how they're the same, how many championships have they won? Is it the same number? Or contrast, have they won more championships? Do they have better stats? We look, and then we can make a decision about what's more important, and then we can decide who is actually better. Identifying, compare, and contrast text. So how do we know that we're reading a compare and contrast text? First, we're going to look for signal words. Remember, these are words often used in compare and contrast text, not always. So we're always looking for those signal words for whatever kind of text we're working with, but we're not necessarily always going to have them, right? So when we're looking at these, compare words are things like also, as well as, both, comparatively, in addition, similarly, those words that show connection and sameness, versus contrast words that are like although, besides, conversely, however, instead, in contrast to, regardless, on the other hand, yet. See, those words show connection in differences, right? We're always talking about the connection between the two things, but sometimes it's how are they the same and how are they different, right? So let's kind of see how some of these function. The road was exceptionally long and had a bright orange line down the middle. The trees on either side were turning the same color orange too. So first, what are we comparing here? So if you said the line down the middle and the trees, you were right. Good job. Awesome. Way to go. And then what is it that about those two things that we are comparing? Very good. And if you pick the color, right? So here we say bright orange, and this says same color orange too. So they have the same orange. Now look at that 2 right there. That is one of our compare words. So that's how we know we're comparing. That means same as, right? Or also. So that's a compare word. So now we know we're comparing. We know that the trees were bright orange, like the line down the middle of the road. Let's try another one. One of the pumpkins stood out with its witch-like color. It was in contrast to the other pumpkins, which were your typical orange and white varieties. So what are we comparing here? Right, we're comparing the pumpkins and in particular their color. Good job. Okay, let's keep going. Now, is this a similar, are we comparing them for similarities, or are we contrasting them for differences? Right, so we're contrasting them for differences. And the difference is their color, right? The witch-like color, the green color, versus the orange and white color of the other pumpkins, right? You see this in contrast right here? That is one of our words. In contrast to, right? That's a signal word. It shows a connection between the two things, but it shows a difference. The connection is their difference. All right. So when we're comparing and contrasting, we are asking ourselves, are connections being made between two or more things that show similarities and differences? If we can say yes to that question, we are reading a compare and contrast text. This can sometimes be tricky because compare and contrast texts are often made up of other types of text structures. So when we look back here, we're seeing two descriptive texts that are connected together to create a compare and contrast text, right? So here we have 3 descriptive texts that we are comparing and contrasting and have connections. So let's start with the first 2. Yellow is a primary color. It is the color of gold, butter, and ripe lemons. In the spectrum of visible light, yellow is found between green and orange. It often means happiness. Blue is another primary color. It is the color of the clear sky and the deep sea. It's located between violet and green on the optical spectrum. It can mean both sadness and calm. So, what comparisons can be made? Right, so they're both primary colors. They're both on the optical spectrum, right? And happiness is very similar to calm in that it is a positive feeling, right? Let's read red and compare it to these two. Red, the final primary color. It is the color of blood, and because of this, it has historically been associated with sacrifice, danger, and courage. It is at the beginning of the optical spectrum. So comparing these, how is it similar to blue and yellow? But hopefully you said that there again is a primary color, and again it is on the optical spectrum. It is also similar to blue in that sacrifice, danger, courage are similar things to sadness, but also courage can be similar to happiness and calm in that it's a positive attribute. Now, let's do some contrast. How are all 3 different? Right. So you might have said they're at different places in the spectrum, beginning, middle, towards the end, right? That they color different things, like gold, butter, versus clear sky and deep sea, versus blood. Those are all very different things, right? And they also have different things. Like blue is different than yellow because sadness is the exact opposite of happiness, right? And sacrifice and danger are also the opposite of happiness and calm. So they all have similarities, they all have differences. but they're all connected. Remember, when we're annotating, when we're looking at these things, we're saying, how are they the same? How are they different? Those are the questions we're looking to answer. So we're going to annotate a compare and contrast text. And as we annotate, remember, you want to look for those signal words, see what's being compared, and then focus on the similarities and differences. All right, we're all done. Please return to the Google Classroom and start in on the Unit 4, Lesson 1, We Do assignment.